So we're gonna start with, I think maybe like a half hour, 40-minute discussion, depending on Francois and Pascal. And then after that, we can do a Q&A session. So feel free to drop your messages in or your questions in the Q&A section. If you can't see it, look for the three dots and more. And then there's a box there that says Q&A. So just drop it in there and then we can ask the questions at the end. My name is Kato, so I'm your host today, representing Terradu. I'm a community ambassador. I'm currently based in London, where we host like monthly events and get the whole Terra community together in person, which is kind of nice. So we have Pascal Joly. He's a product lead and AI data solutions expert. He has 25 years of experience in IT services and digital product development for large companies. He is the founder and owner of IT Climate Ed, providing consulting and education services in digital sustainability. And then we have François. François Burra is a sustainable, digital, and low carbon product consultant, mentor, and speaker with several successful turns as a product lead and UX designer, and 13 years of experience working with startups and agencies in Canada and the US. I'm going to hand it over to both Francois and Pascal to continue your introductions and to get the session going.
Thank you, Kat. And welcome everyone. Really excited to be speaking with you. I noticed that most of you have a mic off, which is great. That way we won't have background sound when we're talking, but obviously turn it on during the Q&A session. And if you want to turn on your camera too, it would be at least to say a quick hello. That would be also fun for us, just to see that it's not just avatar, but actual humans behind the screen. But at your discretion, feel free to just leave it off if you're busy, eating or anything else. Thanks again, Tara, for the opportunity to speak today. And Pascal and I will talk for the next, I guess, 30 minutes to leave a good 20 minutes of discussion. So yeah, quickly, today we'll be speaking and introducing the new playbook that we released called Sustainable by Design, a playbook for product managers that have been created by Climate Product Leader. That is a non-for-profit organization that I co-founded, and Pascal and along with about 15 other folks contributed. We all contributed to the creation of this new iteration, the second version. The first one was released in 2023, and the last version was launched a month ago. And Climate Product Leader has the goal to raise awareness on the topic of digital sustainability for product managers and digital professionals, develop skills and training, and also equip you with tools and framework to incorporate climate consideration as part of your job. I think Kat did an amazing job to introduce me, so I'm not going to go into much further detail, but I offer trainings. I do the measurement and the assessments of the digital footprint of organizations. I build low carbon experience. I'm a coach, but I also have an agency to deliver those low carbon experiences, and I help big organizations to scale the adoption of those best practices. So that's about me. And Pascal, I'll maybe let you say a few more words about you before we start.
Yes, thanks, François. So I'm a digital sustainability consultant. I focus on artificial intelligence, also digital sustainability in general. And I've developed a number of courses. One of them that we're going to talk more about in this session that I'm offering with François, and another one on sustainable climate engineering. My experience, my background is technical background, engineering in IT, data center, and automation, working for large company like HP, as well as startup companies.
Thank you, Pascal. So without further ado, today we will be talking about mostly the playbook. So covering the content of the playbook that you can already find online. Perhaps if you have read it, feel free to share an emoji or say a few words, or just say yes in the chat if you already have heard about the Playbook or read it and its latest web version that is available. But if not, we're going to go through the content high level, and then at the end we will talk about the two courses that are related and adjacent to this Playbook. So first, we're going to start with bad news on why we need to talk about climate when we talk about digital. And the first reason is that the digital industry, or the information and communication technology industry, or tech industry, is responsible for 3.4% of all greenhouse gases emission globally, which is twice the amount of the aviation industry and the same as road freight. So usually that's kind of a bit of a shocking data point that just help us to put in context, what the digital industry represents in terms of its impact on climate change. So that's not necessarily a great news. And as you may know, with the crypto, blockchain, AI, Gen AI specifically, we are the only industry that sees their emission increasing exponentially. So this is not necessarily great news, and it's going to get worse. So basically just put us in a situation where we have to take responsibility if we work in tech and see how we can do better. I'm not going to dive too much into this graph, but basically just explain a bit how emissions are distributed in our industry. And usually when we talk about the environmental impact of our industry, the tech industry, we think about data centers as the big, evil, the big source of emissions. But in reality, it's only 1/4 of emissions that are associated or attributed to data centers. And another quarter is attributed to all the infrastructure that support our ecosystem or industry, which are satellites, submarine cables, antennas, and everything related to this, both on the manufacturing side and the electricity consumption. And then a good chunk of it, more than half, is attributed to end users, which is manufacturing of all the devices that we use. We all, as like the average worldwide, we have above 10 electronic equipment per individual. You could do your screen, your TV, your computer, your phone, your Apple Watch, or all those devices. It just tally up to a huge amount of emission because we have to produce them. So it requires a lot of extraction, but also there's a lot of electricity that is attached to it. So just to give you a bit of an idea of the problem that we were talking about, we're not going to go too much into it, dive too much into it, but it's a big problem. It's going to get worse, and it's not just data center or AI. It's a bigger conversation. But the good thing is that with all crisis or challenges, there's opportunity that come with it. And today we want to talk about what you can do. And one of our main message is that the climate impact that we can have via our work, via our job, is way bigger than the impact that we can have as an individual. So basically, we need to see how we can incorporate climate change in our job, because the change that the impact that we have as an individual is just basically on us. But if we can take it out to our job, then suddenly we can impact millions or billions of people, depending on the scale of your company. So it's really important to really see how climate change can permeate our job. And at the time in 2023, there were a lot of resources that were created for designers and engineers, but none for product managers. So that's why 2 years ago we launched a first playbook that was called the Climate Product Management Playbook. Now we changed the title for something that is a bit more explicit. And the goal is to share a set of 38 best practices to incorporate climate as part of your job. So today we're going to go through the 6 chapters that tells the story about all the things that you can do. So hopefully the bad news that I've shared a few seconds ago will be would be easier to swallow. Now we're going to talk about the solution. And perhaps, Pascal, you can kick us off with the first chapters, which is to embed sustainability as part of your rituals and routine.
Thanks, François. So here, for each chapter, we'll have some actions that you can do, as well as opportunities for why this is understanding why this is important. So in this chapter here, we want to make sure that sustainable and climate conscious product design and management is going to be part of your daily routine. And that's why some of those things are going to be embedded into your operation, essentially. And in some companies, it's called green ops when you're talking about managing cloud consumption and cloud emissions as part of your operations. But in any case, you want to be able to have metrics that you track over time and have in every initiative the impact on the planet embedded in as a component of these initiatives and part of the scope of those initiatives for product development. And we had, so one of the quotes, so we also, I must mention, for each chapter, we'll have a quote from an inspiring leader. And in this case, Yvon Chouinard is the founder of Patagonia, who is a well-known sustainability leader in the industry. And here, it's really trying to explain that you don't want just products that are financially successful, but also products that respect and preserve the world. And this is where the core of this playbook is about. So in terms of measurement and assessment, if we're talking about digital assessment and cloud in particular, there are a number of platforms, and here we mention a few of them as example: Frogger, Boavista, Greenframe, that can help you determine your emissions, track them over time. And these are licensed products. There are also some open source framework, and we put some reference in the playbook for your information. Another one that you want to pay attention to is your KPIs. And so here we list a number of them. Some of them are related to web page design, and others are going to be also physical. So because, as you know, everything digital is physical at the end of the day. And so you would want to include, for instance, for your equipment, for your employee equipment, the lifespan of this equipment, and all the operational energy that's being consumed by using this equipment. And these could be essentially an impact of your product. And we're not going to go into the detail in this presentation of scope 1, 2, and 3, but you have to think about what impact your product will have, not just on digital usage, but also on people using your products, maybe on electronic equipment. So one chapter that we added in particular for this playbook is about AI. So since the first version, obviously everybody has been not only talking about AI, but developing products that must have AI as a feature. Everything has to be AI enabled. And we try to highlight some of the things that you can do to mitigate the energy impact of AI by using these products or AI and embedding AI feature more efficiently, measuring them. So there's a specific body of research just for measuring the AI impact beyond cloud consumption. And then we have also some example, a good case study with Salesforce.com that has done publicly, that has produced a lot of public data about how they optimize their AI consumption and how they track their usage. And when we talk about AI these days, we are really referring to Gen AI, generative AI. And here, a good example to contrast what we call traditional AI and generative AI are really the bicycle versus the rocket. So in the context of traditional AI, which has been around for more than 50 years, you're using techniques based on neural networks to make prediction on outcome. And these techniques are very task specific. and most of the time very energy efficient. And we've been using this for weather forecasts, for a lot of image classification, and even medical field for a very long time. And recently, in the last 3 years, I would say we've seen really the prominence of generative AI to create new content. And here, really, we're talking about a whole different ball game in terms of energy consumption. We're talking also about not just generating text, but images, audio, videos trained on really large data sets, and having a very general scope in nature. And as such, they're extremely energy intensive. So another thing that as a product manager you can do is use your influence to impact other groups that you're going to work on. So the product manager is really at a hub of many different stakeholders, marketing, development teams, QA teams, management. And as such, you have a key role in your ability to influence stakeholders internally. Even you're going to talk to a lot of customers, and you can use maybe climate working group internally, set one up if you don't have one yet in your company, and then try to use these groups to influence your view of product as something that has to be sustainable from the very beginning. And we have a good case study here also that we included with the French Ministry of Culture, and how they implemented these influence approach to improve their sustainability.
I'm gonna take over here. Thanks, thanks,
Yeah,
Pascal.
go ahead, François.
Another chapter that we obviously right now we're just going very we're more offering like different buckets of best practices that we can dive deeper into the Q&A and during the course. So we're just glancing over those best practices. But this chapter called Discover Mindfully is all about how you can, even before building anything or designing anything, you can make the right choice by making sure that your discovery process or your research process include the environment and anticipate the consequences or the impact, potentially negative impact, that your digital product or services can have on the environment. So it's all about how you include the environment in your brief, how you can adapt your research to include a non-human persona beyond non-users, so the planet, and how also by making a more thorough research, you can also trim down your scope and remove, the product bloat from the get-go before you even start to design it. So that's, resonating with a lot of MVP concept that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. And then also one of the key aspect in this chapter is to talk about obsolescence. And basically, to make to oversimplify it, but to make a very strong point about it, is that if your experience force users to buy a new set of equipment, electronic equipment, that's something you should avoid at all costs. So it's really important, as we know, that the materiality and the manufacturing aspect of building devices has a huge toll on the environment. Everything we can do to let user keep using their phone as long as possible while using our experience, that's the best, because we don't want them to being forced to buy new equipment just to be able to use your app or use your experience. So really, it goes into the line of accessibility and making sure that your product works on all devices, all the equipment, with all the operating system, whether it's a phone or a computer, to make sure that it still work in the greatest context of usage, but also in the worst context, with a old phone, old computer, with low low network connectivity, and so on and so forth. So those are things that you can already set up for success right from the get-go before even you start building your product. And as you may know, IDEO and Tim Rounds was saying that mindful product design means thinking about how what we create affect the world beyond just the bottom line. So it kind of like reinforced what Pascal was saying around the quote with Yves Chouinard, that we have to think about we have to go beyond just digital, if we're truly trying to be responsible about what we create. Another aspect, that push us to really have a strong discovery process is that we know that 80% of new product launch fails. So it means that what we are building is kind of a waste, right? Waste of time, waste of money, but also waste of resources, electricity and so on. So it's really reinforced the point that we should really validate our product to make sure that one, it's useful, meaning that we validated the hypothesis, we make it like as valuable as possible and we test and iterate. Also, the second U is the usable. We have to make sure that people actually, so it's more tying to the UX side of it, but that it works in different contexts, even non-optimal context, but that people can actually perform the task that they are trying to perform, and then that it's used. Because if you try to do all those things right, but at the end of the day, this feature or product is not being used, then either you can try to improve the adoption or the frequency of usage, or you would have to decommission it. Because if you don't decommission it, it means like it complexify your code, for no specific reason, but also it costs you from cloud infrastructure standpoint, because you have to store the data, you have to store the code, and all of that create waste again, and it's not making your business run efficiently. So you really have to keep this three rule of useful, usable, and use in mind to before you even start building your product, or those concepts in mind, and set parameters for decommissioning product in the future if they don't hit a certain threshold. And one case study that I like, and it's a company or organization that I helped in Canada. They were about to call, it's the city of Laval in the province of Quebec, and they were about to redo their, or to revamp their whole website, and they did a big study and research phase before, and they realized that about 30% of their PDF were barely seen by anyone, and that about 10% of the page of the entire website were not used at all, or like entire sections. So what they did is that they just, killed all of those pages, removed those pages from the scope, and even like some initial requirements that were kind of copying, doing that were embedded into the scope because they were trying to redo the previous website, but just a bit better. They also managed to remove a lot of features from the scope because there was maybe a very overloading the experience, making the website very slow, but without adding necessarily value. So it's really good case study on how you can maybe, challenge the status quo and also remove things from the scope and make the experience lighter and also cheaper to maintain and to build. Another chapter that is also very important and interesting is the design piece, which is how you can incorporate frugality or minimalism into the way you design. And it doesn't mean that it's boring, right? Frugality is about being resourceful and innovative, and usually people are more creative when they have a set of constraints. If you can do everything, then suddenly become overwhelming. But when you have a set of constraints, that's when you can become a bit more innovative. So here, this chapter cover all the best practices around how you can build the simplest, most straightforward experience possible. How you can also limit the use of multimedia, because basically on the web, the bigger is kind of like a transportation company. The bigger the package is, the bigger the distance you have a truck has to drive, the more gas is being consumed. So gas is kind of a proxy for emissions. It's the same on the web. The bigger the package that you have to transfer, the bigger the emissions, to oversimplify it. So when you are trying to put Gen AI into your product, this is a huge package. You're going to need several truck. If you're putting video all over your experiences, even if they're not being used, that's also huge packages that you have to carry. So consuming more electricity. And then you can go from videos to animation to audio to text and so on and so forth to font and policies, choices. So here it's all about we're not saying like we should go from one extreme to the other, but sometimes just because we love our craft, we tend to put a lot of videos, a lot of background animation and things like that don't serve the purpose of that don't help that create confusion for users, don't necessarily drive business value, and that makes your experience lower, right? So you really have to think about, how can I be more intentional, surgical, acupunctural, like use any name that you want in your experience so that it's actually delivering the business value and makes an experience that is simple for users regardless of the context of use. So just, putting a bit more, being conscious about the impact. So that's about how you can, some principle about designing frugally your experience, but also there's a case study here with Brussels environment. And you can see that by revamping their website and thinking about their emissions, they start to affect positively a lot of KPIs. So not only they slash their emissions from the website from 5, they slash in 5 their emission from 136 grams of CO2 equivalent per visit to 0.25, right? So it's a pretty big jump. And also reduce the amount of data transferred per page, almost by 3. They reduce the number of requests, because the more like your truck has to go back and forth, the more you consume electricity, right? So not only they reduce the size of the page by 3, so it's a way lighter, so less smaller package means smaller electricity, the amount of gas that is required to transport that package is not going to be as high, but on top of it, it reduces the frequency. So that's also a good thing. So you can see that how when you incorporate those best practices, suddenly everyone is winning. The business value is higher, the user value is higher, and the environment is also thanking you for that. And Pascal, perhaps I'm going to take it if you want, but feel free to chime in if you want to add up. But I think this is an important to stay on the analogy of the transportation or the truck, that I was using earlier. Here, being carbon aware means also like choosing a sustainable hosting provider. But what does sustainable mean in this case is that you want to choose a high performing, high efficient cloud provider. But also you want to find one that is powered by renewable energy, not buying credits everywhere, but actually powered by renewable energy locally. And also that is close to your end users, because the lesser the distance, again, with the truck, the lesser the distance is, the less energy it consumes. So here it's really important to embed, some carbon awareness principle into your experience by choosing the right cloud provider. And there's also another aspect of carbon awareness, which is to actually start not educating your users, but more raising awareness around the emissions that are associated to their usage. And in that case, it's a train company called Trainline in Europe who are surfacing basically the carbon cost into their platform by showing that by thanking their user actually that if they're using the train booking with their platform, they're going to save 92% of CO2 emissions versus if they were using a car and driving for the same distance. So there's also a way that you incorporate that into your experience by thanking your users and educating them and reinforcing positively their behavior. So that was the last and 6th chapter of the playbook. Obviously, we glanced over a lot of topics, high level, and we have a lot of more time to answer your question and maybe deep dive on some of those best practices. But to sum up, if you follow those best practices that are described not only in the playbook that you can access already, but also in our course where we go in much further detail on all those best practices, it comes with a lot of benefits on the product level, because as we say, it's a lighter, faster product. So it's a better experience for users. If you have a transactional website, it converts better as well. Your organic SEO and ranking would be higher. So there's a lot of benefits that come with just your product. And there's pros and positive aspect as well on the business side, because not only you can differentiate yourself from the competition, sorry, because you're going to have more these sustainability aligned values that are embedded in your product. So not only is going to help you attract and retain your top talent, but also to attract win new customers and retain existing ones. And given that climate change is not going to disappear, and the newest generation were raised with climate anxiety, to some extent eco anxiety, then it's going to connect more with their values to choose your product, choose your business, rather than another one who kind of disregard climate consideration, let's say. So there's basically win-win everywhere. And the one win that is not on the screen right now is that it's a win for you, because as a professional, then you become also even more competitive, because you will have a new set of best practices or a new set of lens that will help you to be even better at your job. So just to recap, those are all the best practices that are listed into this checklist. So as we said, like there's a set of 38 best practices structured around 6 chapters that you see on screen. And all of those best practices, we will dive into them. So the first course that I deliver by myself, but with the support of the Playbook and Climate Product Leader, is called Digital Product Decarbonization with Terra. And basically the goal here is to go over all of those best practices, all of those concepts, and help you to master them so that you can, after each session, be able to incorporate them into your job, right the same day or the next day, to make it very practical. And this is structured around 4 modules. There's office hours when you can interact with me directly. You can also do it at your own pace. There's a quiz involved as well, and then there's going to be a certificate that would be produced at the end, so you can create also a discussion in your network and try to take advantage of this certification to be also more competitive, whether it's at your current job or in maybe in your next opportunity. So that's the first course that is attached to the Playbook that cover it all. And then the second course that I would let Pascal dive into it is one that we created, the two of us, specialized on the sustainable AI principles. So Pascal, maybe you want to say a few words about it?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, François. So this one is really all about the aspect of the playbook talking about sustainable AI, and not just sustainable AI for product managers, but also for consultants, as well as analysts, cloud analysts, or AI or sustainability analysts, who are trying to make a sense of how much AI is impacting the environment within their company and what to do about it. So we have 4 chapters here as well, covering everything from measurements to optimization to how to use AI mindfully. And this course structure is also available through the Terra platform at your own pace, with office hours, weekly office hours, where either François or myself will be available, and we'll have knowledge quiz to test you along the way. And that's about it. We've given this course last year, and we had really good feedback. So hopefully you'll enjoy it as well.
Yeah. And so basically, if you want to dive deeper, like we're here for 20 minutes, but if you want to dive even deeper on all those topics, you have 2 courses that have been running for a few years, ready for you to unlock those learnings. So our goal is really to drive impact into our industry and make the tech industry a bit more sustainable. And so with that in mind, we thank you for your presence today or your participation, and we're looking forward to hear your question and hopefully address some of them. So thank you again, and maybe you can ask a question in the chat, or and yeah, we'll tackle them one by one.
And feel free to come off mute as well. and say hello.
I saw that there was one question about where to find the playbook. So I think we'll send a link to everyone, right, Kat, after this.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. François, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. No, I was saying that you already shared it on in the chat, right? So
yeah.
So yeah, it's already there if you want to have a look at it.
But we can ask Gertie to send it again in the email. I think she sends a follow-up email.
Yeah, sounds good.
Wade? Quick question. Yeah. Great material. Thank you very much. And I could see how it would be empowering to a product manager, a product delivery team. I'm curious what you've been hearing as you've been, executing the course and training people through this material, what you're hearing about leadership of organizations, if they're demanding this, or if it's just like sort of bottoms up still at this phase where product managers out of their own eco-consciousness are adapting these practices, or if you're saying, no, actually there's a demand generating for this. Because in my ideal world, this would be regulated and they would, we would have to adapt these principles, but we're very far from that, right? We're on the somewhere toward the opposite side of that spectrum. So I'm curious what you're hearing about the demand in senior leadership or elsewhere coming from other aspects. Maybe there is some regulation or something forcing organizations to start thinking more seriously about this stuff.
Yeah, maybe I can try to answer it, but Pascal, feel free to also bring other lens on the topic. But I think there's different markets at the moment. I would say like Europe is perhaps 5 years ahead of what's happening in North America at the moment. Quebec is a bit the province of Quebec is a bit in between those two continents with a bit more advanced on the topic. But I would say that there's when you talk in Europe, there's already regulations. Specifically in France, you have a regulation that force mid-size and large-size companies to disclose their digital footprint. So they have to do it, which is not the case in North America, right? And there's other regulation in Europe, on AI, where you have to disclose the electricity footprint of your consumption of your model. So that helps the markets to be more mature, which is not yet where we are, but we hope that the regulation will come here, whether it's going to be anytime soon or we take a few more years to TBD. But then to your question about like whether it comes from bottom up or top down, it varies. There's companies that have sustainability goals, large banks as part of or even e-commerce platform as part of their strategy goals, and in that case, they empower teams to equip themselves, train, organize trainings and measurements and so on to understand better their emissions and take action. Sometimes it comes from just employees or IT department or the sustainability department or ESG to take the lead on those things and kind of like create a momentum internally from there. So it varies depending on the context and the maturity of the market and the company. But I've seen at least firsthand kind of different scenarios and different type of companies, whether it's cities, governments, research centers, or private companies. Like everyone is trying to ramp up on the topic. We're still more on the awareness phase, but there's a lot of tools, a lot of best practices that exist, a lot of service and consulting businesses structured around it. So all the solutions are there. It's just a matter of getting a momentum internally, getting some budgets, and doing the first step, knowing that it's a long journey. Like you have to start small, first steps. You don't climb a mountain in one step, right? You have to like a thousand steps before you reach the top. So this is really how we should see it. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an answer. But Pascal, I don't know if there is also, given that you're based in the US, maybe you have a more specific answer to offer.
Yeah, for sure. I'm based in the US and in the Silicon Valley on top of it, which is very, tech growth oriented. So you're really facing headwind when you're going to talk about some of those topics. However, I must say that every job and every product manager job can be a climate job. And so don't wait from an incentive from the top, from management to take action, because you can actually, you empowered as part of your job to influence others and start your own initiative. And that's something that I try to emphasize in my coaching because we don't have to wait and see, what's going to happen in the next administration to take action.
That's awesome. Thank you both. The vibe I got when I was listening to you too was that greener products are actually better products because the usability that you talked about is critical. Accessibility for all just makes it better because those users who do have all the facilities at their disposal, do have high bandwidth, do have the latest devices, etc. It'll be even so much better for them. But if you design at the lowest common denominator, it's going to be a better product. And the frugality, it's better for business if they're spending less money to maintain and sustain a product, which they are if they're watching their AI costs and other things. So there's just so many side benefits as there are to lots of climate solutions. But
so I think you got the gist of it. It's exactly that. And what we do is in the playbook in our course, we tell you exactly how you can do it, like practically speaking, based on your job, based on your responsibility, your role, and your company. And that's that we really try to make it as practical as possible so you can really implement that, like not only understand the concept, but really implement it, right away. So you got it perfectly. Wait, thank you for your comment and question. Anyone else would like maybe to ask a question, whether it's about the content of the presentation today or about the courses? Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off there.
No,
Sandra has a question in the Q&A box. Sandra, I don't know if you want to come off mute and ask it yourself, but I'm also happy to ask it if you're unable to.
Sure. I was just curious. I've ended up for a lot of projects using no-code platforms like Webflow, and I find that they almost always score pretty low on auditing tools in terms of how good they are in terms of energy usage. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on those platforms broadly, like if there's something that should be avoided or if there are ways to use them. Obviously, like some of the common sense, like reducing media size, avoiding video that you were talking about. But like if there are any other thoughts you have broadly on those types of platforms, that'd be great.
Pascal, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, we don't. I can say a few words. So you're talking about platforms that are becoming very prevalent because of LLM and vibe coding, essentially. So now you just put a prompt and it's going to generate code. And so it's sort of an evolution of this low code or no code development. And it does, depending on what's behind in terms of technology, it can have a significant impact. And here, the way you optimize it is not just by saying nobody should use these add-on tools, but being very good at prompting and energy efficient prompting. And this is something that, there are some best practices around that. And we talk about it in the Sustainable AI course, for instance.
Yeah. And also maybe another aspect is that those no-code platform, to be able to create them, they also have a huge infrastructure. Like I'm also thinking maybe, like the Squarespace of this world and the Wix of this world, it requires an overhead that is quite big to build them, to make it easier and user to actually build it without knowing anything about development or coding. So that level of infrastructure that is required makes it heavier as simply as possible. So there's still ways to, even using WordPress, to optimize it and to create like light experiences. but it's never going to be as easy as something that you build custom, right? Because you can really control from A to Z the whole experiences and the stack and the technology. And usually there's a lot of dead weight around all of those platforms, a lot of plugins, components, and you know, a lot of fluff that is not even being used, but still below to your experience. So obviously it's not good from an environmental standpoint, but for your user, it's going to slow the experience. And so that's what we want to avoid. So yeah, there's a use case for using the open platform, like if you want to build an early MVP just to validate some hypotheses and stuff like that. But I think when you go into production, you should try to avoid that as much as possible, because usually it doesn't offer the best experience, I would say, or the best results. So, but I don't have like an intense experience either on those with those platform, but that's kind of my take on it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, just to add on to what François was talking about with the example of website design, you know, as soon as you use a platform like Wix or Squarespace, if you really want to be efficient from a resource consumption standpoint, you're going to have to spend some time just cleaning them up and removing all the bloating essentially that they come with by default, right? So default state is they're completely bloated with tons of stuff that you don't need. And if you really want to be mindful about what your website is going to be consuming and how efficient it's going to be, as a result, you need to spend some time trying to declutter it, essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We have a question from an anonymous person asking about whether or not you have been in touch with certification organizations such as PMI so that more PMs can learn and implement these sustainability concepts in their day-to-day.
Quick answer, no. But if we love an intro, as simple as that.
I actually have a friend who works at PMI, so I can.
Let's have a chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, Terra offers a certificate with attached with all the two training that we discussed today. But yeah, I mean, like our goal is to have as big of an impact as possible. So if we can, you know, tap into other communities or network organization and try to make those best practices, raise awareness, on those best practices. Like it's a win-win for everyone. So we'd love to take it offline, Kat, and yeah, that this is what we're. Our limitation factor for Pascal and I is our network, right? Because the content is there, the best practices are there, and it's really well known and documented. It's more a matter of how much we can make this well known. Yeah, and I see that there's a question about websites, how you can measure the performance of a website. So just to be specific, you can't measure with free tools the environmental performance of a website. You can only measure with free tools the performance of one page at a time. So you have Website Carbon that is interesting. One that I personally prefer, and I know the founder, but I don't work for them, but I just find the tool particularly interesting, is called EcoGrader. I just pasted it in the chat, because they not only do the audit of your website from an environmental standpoint, but they also provide specific recommendation on the specific page that you're auditing. So I find that Website Carbon tell you like the data about whether it's good or bad with a few more inputs or KPIs, but EcoGraders tells you exactly what to do. Again, it's one page. When you want to measure the environmental footprint of a whole product, a whole website, services, app, or even a business from a digital standpoint, then you have to go into professional services and enterprise level products or services. Yeah.
Cool. We have a question from Amy. Amy, do you want to come off mute? Also
Sure.
happy.
So Yes, so that was my anonymous question. But I'm really happy that I asked it because it sounds like you have a connection. So that's super cool. I just know PMI is a great resource for a lot of PMs in many industries. And so that would be an incredible opportunity to really broaden the scope of how this can be implemented in so many different sectors and in so many different kind of hats that you had said the PMs play. This is kind of like a follow-up question. So again, for PMs, if they're in the more traditional, kind of space and working, how might they gain opportunities to kind of work with this specific lens, whether it be like a challenge or hackathon? Do you know anything like that, or is that part of your course? Just curious.
Do you want to take it, Pascal?
So can you rephrase? You're talking about specific events, Amy, that can be set up for getting those concepts across?
Yeah, so either like obviously a hackathon would be a very specific event, but maybe within your course, do you offer some sort of like challenge that, is like an assignment that students could take on in identifying,
yeah,
these concepts and really practicing them?
Yeah, so the idea is the course will have at the very end some kind of project that you take on and apply all the concepts that you learn during the course to your context. So that's sort of the sending away so that you don't end everything. Everything that you learn doesn't just end after you've gone through the material, but you can take those concepts and practically apply them to your company, your business, your customers, your community.
Yeah. I was just reading in the chat that green project management got acquired by PMI. So interesting. I'll be curious to see what type of courses they offer. But anyway, that would be for another day. Any other question? We perhaps have time for 2 quick questions, given we have 4 minutes left.
And feel free to just come off mute. You don't have to put it in the Q&A box.
Melissa?
Yeah, I have a question about culture shifting within the org or the company, but mainly my background has been working with agencies or within an agency. So you're often working with different types of clients, different needs, different levels of involvement from leadership on their part. So I am curious how beyond discovery, beyond setting the parameters kind of in the tech stack recommendation or in the product recommendation that you're doing, how do you kind of meet those barriers when you're dealing with someone else's org and someone else's company, and to help them see that, these are levers or parameters that your team cares about, and so this is why you're making these recommendations, and kind of meeting that barrier if you're dealing with an org or company that has their own, bottom lines and maybe their own desired tech stack in some ways. Sometimes they come in saying we have to use these tools or we have to, build on this host.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I will, given we don't have a lot of time left, I'm going to try to answer in 2 points, but maybe also leave time for Pascal to answer. But I think first, you don't have to start with climate. Like 95% of the time, people don't really incorporate those considerations or don't make it a priority in their job. So if you start with climate, potentially people will just disregard your argument, or it would remove credit from your, the value that you can bring to the table. So don't lead with sustainability. Lead with business goals, lead with the benefits, all the stuff that we talked about. So that would be one thing. The second thing is know your audience. If you're talking to a CMO, a CFO, a CPO, a CTO, not all arguments would work the same. So know your audience and tailor. Like if you talk to a CFO, talk about how much is going to reduce those principal. Will reduce the cloud spend by 20% potentially. If you do your calculation and you put your hypothesis and so on. If you talk to a CMO, you can talk about maybe the brand equity that would be improved, and stuff like that. So just make sure that you choose your audience, and based on that, you can tailor the message. So that would be my 2 cents on this. But Pascal, I don't know if you wanted to add something.
I just had one sentence is lead by example. So if you can show your customers you've done it internally and it worked for you, it's a lot more convincing.
Thank you. Thank you
Nice.
both.
And I see a question from Hannah. When does it start? It's ongoing, so it's at your own pace. So you can start now, you can start tomorrow, and then you can complete it as you have time. So it's really up to you. And we will make ourselves available every week or so to answer your question and support your experience, your learning journey. So we have access to us on the Sustainable AI course, and on the Digital Product Decarbonization course, it would be only me on that case.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Cool. Thank you so much, Francois and Pascal, for your time today. We're at the end of this session, so I think Tara will send out an email with this recording afterwards. And if you have any feedback, please let the team know. But yeah, thanks so much for a very insightful and informative session. I really enjoyed it personally.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you.
Really nice.
And thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
for your questions.
well.
Have a great day.